I'm excited we're finally talking about it. Andy's going to take the summary on it. Andy, please take it away.
M3GAN. So this is the latest horror film from Atomic Monster and Blumhouse. Their latest, these two separate horror studios have combined to work together to bring us horror and kind of take over the kind of independent horror space. It's directed by Jared Johnstone, who has done TV before this. Written by James Wan and Akilah Cooper. Akilah Cooper famously wrote *Malignant*, which Zach is a big fan of.
Ah, yes.
um, M3GAN is about Gemma, played by Allison Williams, who you'll recognize from Get Out. She plays the girlfriend in that. Gemma is a workaholic. She works for some tech company building kind of toys for kids. The movie opens with this great toy commercial for this like grotesque Furby-esque thing that's totally interactive, and you need an app to play. And they go all in, and it's this horrific thing, and it's kind of about how kids are so addicted to the technology. And this is her life, and she's also working on this secret project, this doll that could really revolutionize the industry. But tragedy strikes, and her niece Katie's parents are killed in an accident. Katie comes to live with her, and we get that reluctant parent setup there that we've seen so often. Gemma is not ready to be a mother. She's not ready to be a parent. She doesn't really know how to. She just works with, she's an inventor. She works with her hands. She's not really good at this whole thing. Doesn't really know how to parent. But she has a bright idea of saying, "Hey, this doll that I've been working on. It's a learning computer, just like the T-1000, just like the Terminator. Why don't you make friends with it, and it'll learn to be your guide." And things go really well initially. The doll learns about Katie and helps parent, helps soothe her, helps copper now. It's kind of a therapist. But of course, like any good sci-fi story, the AI will eventually become self-aware, will become concerned with its own existence, and eventually goes on a big terror spree, which we've all seen in the trailers. So that's our setup. Zach, what'd you think?
Chucky, Annabelle, Brahms, M3GAN. There have been a lot of horror dolls over the years, and M3GAN treads the same ground, I think, as pretty much all of those, but manages to stand out in a unique way by embracing the camp, right? Doesn't lean all the way in. It manages to kind of step back and look at itself as a bit of a goofy concept. And I think it kind of works for what M3GAN's doing. I think it might be a little overpraised, in my opinion. I also thought the same thing as *Malignant*. And uniquely, I think M3GAN stands apart from *Malignant* in that it's not kind of the first to break out and do this currently. *Malignant* kind of paved the way. People compared *Barbarian* to that. Now we're here with this. While they're all different features, like M3GAN literally opens with like a camp ad that's very funny. The second line in the feature is about a dead dog. It's great. It knows exactly what it is, but that doesn't necessarily make it like a good movie. So I'm excited to talk about it because I feel conflicted. I think it does some stuff well. I do have some issues with it. Let's talk about M3GAN. Where do you want to get started?
Well, let's kind of talk about tone, because I think this is something that surprised me. It's a horror movie, but it's very campy, and it's almost a horror comedy. Like, it is so funny, and like it's never really scary at any point. You're never really terrified, and a lot of the terror is kind of the scary moments are kind of tongue in cheek and make you laugh. Like, there's parts where M3GAN does super super creepy stuff, and you can't help but laugh, but it's both creepy and funny at the same time. The other thing that the movie does really well, and I think helps it succeed, is that it takes its premise very seriously. Gemma being this robotics developer at this tech company, she's very passionate about the work and like the issues there about having to develop a new toy in time for the holidays. It's very real, and also the death of her niece's parents, I guess her sister. It takes this premise very seriously. Like, the first half of this could go in any direction. It could be a drama, it could be a comedy, it could be a dramedy, it could be a number of things. But because it really takes time to set up our characters and our situation very seriously, then like it pays off more when it gets into the camp.
Andy's totally right. The kind of setup in the front is actually smart here and works out very differently. Our young protagonist Violet is like tragically an orphan right at the open with a pretty clever like three scene sequence that sets up our beginning, and suddenly she is kind of forced to live with Allison Williams' character Gemma, who is this kind of tinkerer inventor who's been working on this big project and is under pressure from her boss. And now like the two of them kind of have to figure out how to get along. So the introduction of like a doll to help bridge that gap is perfect, right? Like it would work in any of the other doll movies. But M3GAN is unique in that she is basically like parenting Violet, where Gemma should be doing that.
Yeah.
So you get, yeah, you get a unique bit of spin on it where a character genuinely kind of stops down the movie and says, "Hey, Gemma, shouldn't like we don't need to teach M3GAN how to do all of these things. We don't need to teach M3GAN to tell Violet to eat her peas and put her water cup on the coaster. Like that's something you should be doing. That's a social interaction you should have." And Gemma embraces this idea that like, no, technology can handle that for us. That way we can enjoy our lives and technology can do it. And you get this clever like space where this movie hangs out, where it's like between the people who want to be on their iPhones all the time and the other people who want to have like a genuine authentic experience. Authenticity is huge nowadays, and M3GAN manages to like kind of thread that needle by tackling these topics while also being horror camp, right? Self-aware horror. Like it's kind of funny when it needs to be and it's a little serious when it needs to be, and it ends up being like a relatively charming feature. Like it really does. Like I think that front-loaded stuff with Violet now being like needing a guardian and Gemma being like, yeah, I guess I can take her, like actually kind of works. Like, and that's because of Allison Williams working it in the cast as Gemma. Ronnie Chang also as a very funny boss, like just kind of a jerk who is another like bit of casting who like they know exactly what he's doing. Like he knows what he's doing. He knows why he's there. He's hamming it up. He's doing his Daily Show bits. Fantastic. Who else is in this movie that's worth talking about? A couple of lab assistants played by Jen Van Epps and Brian Jordan Alvarez. That's kind of it. The budget's real small here. They didn't need big talent. I think where they get like their most effective stuff is in the doll, right? Which I think we got to talk about M3GAN.
Yes. So it's this lifelike doll that is, it's like 3.5 feet high, deadpan look. And at first it's very helpful. And the scary part of this is not the killer doll. The scary part is the technology and like the AI part of this, because like for example, the doll asks, "Oh, how did Katie's parents die?" And they don't really want to talk about it. And so she does an internet search and like finds it. Oh, and quotes the news article where like, "Oh, they were brutally killed in the car accident when." So that's really the scary part. But she just has this deadpan look and really great voice work by Jenna Davis, who did the voice, where that it's charming but also lethal at the same time. And M3GAN's primary, like her prime directive, is to protect Katie from any physical or emotional harm. And this is where things kind of get to the extreme, because anything that threatens even Gemma herself, her guardian, M3GAN views as a threat. But it's so like I said, parts are really creepy, and then parts are just so funny because of like the things that the doll decides to do to make the child feel better.
Yeah. Jenna Davis, by the way, voice of M3GAN, notably a Dallas gal. She's from Plano. Who knew? Yeah, M3GAN is like very simply played. It's a really easy effect, right? You get a young girl, Amy Donald is the girl who played like the body of M3GAN, and you just stick like kind of an animatronic looking mask, or maybe just like a flat mask and CGI it after the fact, and they put these like goofy oversized gloves on her hands that look super fake. Like if you look at M3GAN's hands in any shot or in the movie or in a trailer, they look terrible, but like you put her in some decent outfits, and most importantly, like you give her really specific movements, and like you get this like uncanny valley space where like M3GAN is fundamentally supposed to be a robot and clunky, but like moves very fluid, but doesn't have a face that is particularly fluid, and her eyes kind of flit around the room, and this all like
the blinking.
The blinking, yes, like and the eyes kind of moving. This all builds to a head when you get to, of course, the action sequences, the kills. You've seen the trailer, right? You know what's going on in M3GAN. You've got her dancing down hallways and like running on all fours through the woods, which is where like the creep does not work, but the hilarity comes out. Like those are the moments you're supposed to be laughing. And I think like any good slasher, That's kind of the way it's supposed to be, right? Like you're kind of supposed to chuckle along with Ghostface and Scream. Like you're kind of supposed to root for the teenagers to die in X.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of part of the point. And Megan like manages to find that and hold on to it, just like Malignant did, and say, "Hey, you know what? Like it's not so important that these characters are dying. What's important is your experience watching them die and the way you perceive it." And they're catering very specifically to us, for us to like this character and get a laugh out of what's happening, even if it's something terrible like child murdering. But that's Megan.
And that's where I think part of this movie falls a little short, is that it's a PG-13 horror, so they have to tone down a lot of violence. That's the kind of thing that would have put this over the edge. If you would have done an R-rated film, done some really grisly kills, because they're toned down, or like the camera cuts away right at the that you see like blood splatter, so it's a lot of implied violence, no graphic gory violence like we like on this show. That's like you got in Malignant. Actually, that would have been a good if they do a sequel, I think they should definitely push for an R rating and really go for it.
So
but that's
yeah,
one thing that I think kind of falls short.
So I agree. It was originally shot to be an R-rated film. IMDb says in the editing room they figured out that the movie was basically shaping up to be PG-13, and they could just cut a few scenes and it would work. I'm not quite sure that's the case. Oftentimes PG-13 is going to net you larger ticket sales, and that definitely wouldn't hurt for this feature. It would have been very easy for marketing to go, you know what, we don't know if this is going to work. The idea is a little immature. Why don't we dumb it down a little? And that's not a bad thing, I think, in general, except it does hurt some of what's supposed to be like of the more suspenseful scenes, and it makes it a bit softer of a feature all around. There's one kill in particular. I was reading the Reddit movie thread afterwards, and people were genuinely confused like how it worked, because it wasn't obvious enough on screen, and people like, you don't really see the aftermath or anything, so it's not like patently obvious how a character is killed. You could get on the internet later and see, oh, okay, that's how it worked. And I'm happy to explain it, Andy, after, because you're probably thinking, who the hell are you talking about? But the point is, like, I think cutting away from some of the violence does kind of hurt the feature for a big dummy like me. And additionally, like, for all of my praise in its structure, the pacing is way lopsided in this feature. It is nearly an hour before you get to a kill. And we know from the trailer after 45 seconds of watching that there's supposed to be some killing. So, and the movie's only an hour 42. So over half of the runtime is completely missing the horror stuff. Yeah, like it's kind of there. It's suspenseful, and there's some decent stuff in there, but it's mostly introduction of characters and concepts, and it's just a little lopsided, and that makes it a bit dull in the second act. But it's a surprisingly good open and a pretty decent close. And I was surprised, I think, how much I actually ended up enjoying Megan.
Yeah, like a lot of horror, it has a really strong, it goes out with a bang on the third act.
Yeah, and I think that's probably for the best. I know with how much money it's made, Jason Blum is already talking about, oh my God, we're going to greenlight 10 sequels. And I mean, he was on Twitter all weekend. Yeah. He was going nuts. So I'm glad they got a feature on their hands. It never hurts to have somebody new in horror. Any other thoughts or recommendations, Andy?
I think I'm ready.
Would you recommend Megan?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially to fans of horror. It's fun. It's camp. It's not scary. It's really pretty funny. If you're new to horror, this would be a good entry, I think, because it's nothing too terrifying or too grisly or anything like that. Great performances from our leads, Allison Williams, and I said Amy Donald, who plays Megan, Violet McGraw, who plays Katie, who she's the niece whose parents have died. It's a small film. It's a tight 100 minutes. I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend.
I think I'm in the same boat. I got problems with Megan, but like for what it's worth, it's a pretty soft feature. There were a lot of children in our movie theater, which is kind of a bummer. And I say that, and I'm sure people think, oh, he means teenagers because he's old. No, literal children, like 6 to 8 year olds with their parents, like watching this movie. And like that makes it a bit painful. But I think watching it with friends, it's a decent Halloween watch. Like, you could do worse than Megan. It's a little goofy, maybe a little too goofy for me, but like I see the appeal. And I think this is going to be one of those movies people come up and ask me about for the next couple of months. And they're like, oh, you do a movie podcast? Did you see Megan? I'll be, yeah. I'll say, come listen to Oscar Film Reviews, subscribe, rate, and review. New episodes every Tuesday. That's what I'll tell them. And that's what I'll tell you for more interviews, more reviews just like M3GAN.